Good morning and welcome to the REACT Learning Series session. My name is Vanessa Brewer. I am the Regional Interagency Council Program Administrator, and my co-host is Lee Taylor. Lee is the State Interagency Council Program Administrator, and we work at the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. We want to thank you for joining us today. Today's session focuses on using digital media to promote system of care efforts. Our presenter is Levi House. Levi is the communication specialist with the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. And before I turn it over to Levi, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. If you haven't already, please mute your mics. If you have questions during the session, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and Lee and I will be monitoring that throughout the session, and we'll stop Levi when there's an opportune time to do that to ask those questions. Also, this workshop will be recorded and posted on the REACT's resources and training channel, and we'll put that link in the chat box. A session evaluation will also be posted in the chat box a little bit later on in the session. Please feel free to take time to do that. It's a short 4-question evaluation, and we do use that information to plan for future REACT Learning Series sessions. As always, if you need a certificate of attendance, please email me, and I will put my email in the chat box a little bit later as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Levi.
Cool. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Give me 1 second while I get my screen shared here. All right. Am I sharing the right screen? Can everybody see this one? Okay, cool. Sweet. So my name is Levi House. I'm the communication specialist serving the divisions of mental health and substance use disorder within DBH DID. I'll be talking to you today about what digital media is, the impact it can have, and why it's so important we use it to our advantage, and more. Let's see. So in the last 2 decades, social media has become increasingly prevalent in daily life. By the end of 2021, over 53% of the world's population use social media. This number is only going up, which means the amount of opportunities to impact people is also rising. One study found that social media users were about 3 times more likely than non-users to follow health rules established in response to the COVID pandemic. So we know social media is an accessible way to engage with and impact the public. Social media platforms are free for both content creators and viewers and put people on an equal playing field. When information is made most accessible, it's appreciated. Think about the times you've gone to an event but are missing an important detail about it. One of the first places you might check is the event's social media page. If the info you're looking for is easy to find, you appreciate that and associate the event with anticipating your needs, building trust and a rapport. If the page doesn't have the info readily available, it feels frustrating and inconvenient, 2 feelings you might associate with the event and topic. For me, I went haunted housing in October, and there was a specific place I went, and it was like $30 to go, which was like a solid amount of money. So I was like getting excited for this event and doing some research on it. And I went to the Facebook page and saw that it was listed as like a full contact haunted house. And so I was like, okay, I'm not about that. So I had some questions, I wanted to make sure that there was a way that I could opt out of being like touched throughout the haunted house. And I wanted to know like when it started, because the tickets were like from like 8 to like 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. And so like I have a couple questions, and I couldn't find the answers to these questions anywhere. And I was pretty frustrated with that. I was paying a lot of money to go to this haunted house and just had a couple basic questions and no way to find the answers. And so my experience could have drastically improved if the event had properly used digital media to spread information to answer the questions I had. So digital media includes any content that was made using technology to be distributed electronically. So like on the internet or on any kind of electronic device. So it can include audio, video, websites, social media, and apps. So basically, when you're creating digital media, we're going to assume that the content you're making is going to be consumed or viewed online, whether it be a social media post on a social media platform or a flyer that's being sent out via email. Digital media is a free way to make info clearer, more accessible, and more shareable. We know that visuals and stories are memorable and effective, and digital media provides a perfect way to share visuals and stories. Digital media has also been shown to reduce stigma and shift opinions. Ooh, sorry. Our goal is to bridge the gap between the services and resources that exist and the people who could benefit from them. One easy and reachable opportunity we have to do that is through using digital media. Ask yourself, what kinds of ways do I currently communicate? Do I text, email, use Slack or some other messaging platform, or post to a social media page? What kind of things can I post about? Where do other materials we've made direct people to go to for resources? Is that place regularly updated, a good representation of what's available at the moment? What kinds of ways exist that I could easily do but don't use to communicate? Anything you're currently communicating to a large group of people, you can also post on social media. You can post photos of people with their consent, testimonial videos, any kind of flyer you create for an event. You can turn paper materials into social media posts. Something I do each month is the newsletter for 988 in Kentucky, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It goes out as a report via email, but we also create social media graphics that contain the same information as the newsletter, just in a more digestible format. Anything you share to your audience in any way, you should also share on social media. For example, if you have an event that goes well and you have pictures from that event that you plan to email out later or share it some other way, see what happens if you share those via your Facebook page too, or vice versa. There's so many ways to share digital media that sometimes the best way to reach people is through multiple avenues simultaneously. The more outlets you put your information on, the more people it'll reach. You can also repost other people's stuff. If you experience a lull in things to post about, you can remind people that your page is a resource by sharing other posts that provide resources or share tips, skills, or opportunities. When you share other people's stuff, you don't have to say anything, but you can if you want. If you want to, you can be a very active presence online, locking other people's other accounts posts and resharing them with captions, or you can be a more passive one where you do post and create your own content as well as share others' content, but maybe you don't always comment or caption things. If you share on a somewhat regular basis, no matter how you do it, people will still get used to your online presence and will be reminded of you exist and of what you do. The downside to digital media is that there's so much of it that studies show we only have about 1.7 seconds to capture our viewer. So it's important to do it strategically. You not only want to think about how to design strategically, but also how to reshare and post strategically. The first thing is to not overshare. Think of how many emails you get a day from things you've subscribed to, but now wish you hadn't. All the social media posts you see on your feed and all the communications you receive in a day. You do want to be a digital media presence, but you do not want to be a digital media pest. If you're emailing, only email what's necessary. If you have things to share about, share them. But if it's a ton of stuff, maybe compile some of it into just one email. If you're posting, keep it regular, but don't overkill it. Post everything you need to, but maybe use carousel posts where you can post multiple photos with captions at once. Another thing about sharing strategically is thinking about the algorithm. We've all heard about social media algorithms and the hoops people will jump through to try to counter it. That's because the algorithm can work against you if you're posting too much. If you're posting a ton and people are skipping over your posts, the algorithm will not show your posts as much. Usually, if you post pretty frequently, the algorithm and your post gets seen a lot, the algorithm tends to sort of boost those up a little bit as well. Additionally, if you're emailing, be strategic about how you send your emails. Look at all the emails in this inbox. By just looking at the subject line, which one is most appealing or interesting to you? Which ones give you an idea of the email you're about to open or make you more curious about what's inside? For me, it's the ones that use the subject lines as headlines, like the story on Vietnam Kitchen, which is a restaurant in Louisville, or the email that tells me very clearly that there's a new webinar available. You can use this email subject line as a headline spot to draw in the viewer and get the main point across. And these different headlines can sort of encourage people to be more curious about what's inside and get you to open them and see more information than what you'd expect just from that headline as well. When creating any kind of digital media, before you begin, remember to lead with intention. First, ask yourself, who is the audience? Will this target audience be most likely to view this on their phone or desktop? Is the target audience younger or older? What partners should I collaborate with to get my message across? No matter how you're starting, if you are using a template or maybe just starting with a blank page, before you select your layout, consider how much of what kind of info you're working with before making any choices. Do you have a good chunk of text, or is most of the content an image? These questions will impact what would be best for your layout. When you're working with a lot of text, use a less busy background to keep the emphasis on the text. If you're working with a small amount of text, you can use a busier background. Try to use graphics or images whenever possible, but do not overload the viewer with info. A good thing that I try to ask myself is, if I'm a distance away from these materials and I see the image in the biggest text, does it give me an idea about what's on the rest of the materials? So you want to be able to like just have an at a glance idea of what this material is about. Graphics created for digital media should be treated like billboards. And there's a few reasons for that. Realistically, you can fit a lot on a billboard. Remember, you do have 1.7 seconds to capture your viewer and get your initial message across. So because of this, and for many other reasons, it's important to not have a ton of text on your graphic, if possible. Sometimes this is unavoidable, like if you're making a graphic for a training that needs to list like objectives and other information like that. But when possible, refrain from large amounts of text on a graphic. It becomes overwhelming for the viewer, and it also messes with screen readers and other things that make it less accessible to people. The image shown here is pretty blunt and forward about how they feel about long form text on graphics. One point it makes is that you need to include alt text of images no matter what. If your audience includes anyone who uses screen readers, this information will be extra helpful. And so there are some it's pretty easy to include alt text on different posts. And I won't go through like the step-by-step of that, but I am including the links here on how to do that. It's just like one really easy step. You just like click a button and then enter like a brief description of the image that you see. Just so that other people can access it if they're using screen readers and stuff like that. And I will be doing like a Canva demo later, and so I'll try to demo what it looks like of creating the alt text later as well. Yes, let's see. So one more point on accessibility is that everyone sees differently, and some people don't see certain colors. So this means it can be hard to tell certain colors apart, and using good contrasting colors in the design of your graphics makes them more accessible to everyone. You can check the accessibility of your graphic by using this website, Web Accessibility in Mind. I'll use this tool later when I do the Canva demo as well. It's just very easy, just making sure you just use like a color picker to like look at your graphic and make sure that it's easily readable, essentially. So we'll check that out a little later. So when you're sharing strategically, keep in mind that we have a very short time to captivate the viewer, but we also have a small amount of room to do it into when you're designing for digital media. That's one reason it's important to make it as easy as possible and as effortless as possible for the viewer. There are 3 easy ways to cut down on not only usage of space, but also work that we'll be asking the viewer to do. The internet is very lazy, and we can combat that by doing just a couple extra easy steps. So these 3 are tiny URLs, QR codes, and link trees. So tiny URLs turn long links into small, easy to remember links. QR codes skip the step of having to enter a link at all, and link trees host several links all in one location at an easy to remember URL. All 3 of these strategies cut out work for the viewer, save space, and tell the viewer that at a glance, whatever they're looking at has more elements to it. The great thing about tiny URLs is that they never expire, so you can use them forever. That's one reason it's important to use the alias feature on tinyURL, which lets you customize the back half of the shortened URL that you create. That's this little part right here. This makes it easier for the viewer to remember the URL and to type it in. For me, I know that I'm lazy on the internet as well. I know that if I see a big long link that has like a ton of numbers and like weird symbols in it, and I'm being asked to remember that and top it in, or either like reference that graphic for every character that I need to top in, I'm very unlikely to go and actually top in that link. But if it is made easy for me and the tiny URL is intuitive to what it's being linked to, then I will go visit that resource because it's made easy for me, you know. So here's one example of using Tiny URL to create memorable and intuitive link. Um, this was a Zoom registration for the Kentucky School of Alcohol and Other Drug Studies, the winter session. It has a really long link and it gets shortened to be something that's easy to remember and makes sense with what the link is. So it was this huge long link, and then I just shortened it to be the KSAODS, Kentucky School for Alcohol and Other Drug Studies dash January 25. Um, yeah, so that's easy to remember, easy to type in. And one thing to note about tiny URLs is that you do not have to include the HTTPS / www when listing the tiny URL. You don't have to include this in any web URLs actually, and not including them will save you space. So like if you go and type in like this URL, for example, on your phone, you don't have to type in the www or anything like that. It will automatically like take you to that, like put that in before you even take you to that website. Um, yeah. So removing that will also save you just a little bit of space on your graphic. So for QR codes make it easy for viewers to access links. You can create QR codes several different ways. Um, I use Canva a lot, and so I just usually use the QR code generator on Canva. But if you Google QR code generator free, lots of different options will pop up. Just be sure that whichever you choose does not expire, or your code will become obsolete after a certain point. Um, Another thing to remember with QR codes is that sometimes your graphic will be seen on a desktop computer, while other times it may be seen on a phone. If you're viewing your graphic on a phone, you can't take a picture of the graphic to scan the code. I do believe you can actually screenshot the QR code and then scan it that way, but most people don't do that. I know I don't. To make sure that everyone can easily access your QR code, take one extra but small step and include the link that your QR goes to, preferably in tiny URL form, so that it's easy to remember and quick to type in. And that way you've sort of covered all your bases on making sure that people can view your resource that you've linked on multiple different devices. If you're sharing a lot of links at once, host, or maybe you're someone who has like just like a slew of links to different resources, and you could use one place that they could all fit. You can use a link tree to host all of those links. And so all the resources are together just at one short, easy to remember link. This is a screen cap of one link tree that I made for the department. When we request to speak at places, we use a specific link based on which branch we're in. So it'd be a lot to remember all the URLs for all of those links. So I just put them all in one place where they're easy to find and navigate. And the one universal link that hosts the other links is short and easy to remember. So this brings us to designing strategically. The first thing to do is to make the point clear quickly. Remember, we lead with intention since we have so little time to capture our viewer. Make sure that when you're creating graphics, you use images or graphics when you can to draw attention and support the message you're working to spread. Make sure that all questions are answered on the graphic you create. The example on this page is a good one because it's eye-grabbing in its colors and contrasts. It uses a combination of text and imagery, and the viewer is given a gist of what the graphic is about at a quick glance, since the most important information is the largest. All questions I might have as a viewer are answered within the graphic, and I know where to go if I have more questions. Yeah, so the most important information is I need to be able to see at a glance that this is some sort of like phone and email bank, and I see it's to save Burnham now. So it's something to do with like a forest, which I can also tell from this visual. And then I get further down into the graphic and see that it's to invite people to a benefit show for Burnham Forest. And so it's sort of arranged as like the top is the most broad, and then it gets more specific as you go down. Um, and I can see right away that like when like the time and date and where I need to go for in-person and virtual options. Just all the questions I have about this event are pretty much answered in this graphic. And if I somehow have more questions, then I know to just shoot them a DM to find out more. The example on this page, I like this one because it uses a combination of images and words, and it has a lot of text, but it doesn't feel overwhelming at all. Um, it's very digestible because of how it's been laid out. Um, it's also sort of working in this broad to specific manner where up top, I know that this is the target audience for this is women in high conflict relationships. And then once I, keep going down, it gets more specific and lets me know exactly what the support group will be about, who it's facilitated by, if there's a fee. Um, so it begins broadly and then goes more specific as you get down the sections. And I would say that the only downside of this graphic is that they did not shorten the URL, but it's still pretty easy to remember and type in one, honestly. Um, yeah, that's probably the only thing I'd change about it. But I think it's like a really nice use of like an image that like catches my eye and the way it's sectioned off in this and with this being like a broad section, I think it works really well and does a really good job of pulling off a lot of text at once. I like this one as well because it shows that it doesn't have to be a super fancy ordeal. It can be simple. This flyer works because it lays out all the necessary information, and the large text in the center makes sure viewers know right off the bat that this information is about a tutoring club. And as well, it's following that broad to specific layout where it starts really broad and then gets really specific at the end. This flyer works, I think, because it puts an unexpected spin on a mundane ask. So the ask is for the viewer to take a quick survey for 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, to see how much they know about the life-saving service, to help guide marketing and other awareness and messaging efforts. But instead of just asking the viewer, will you take this survey, it appeals to emotion and puts a sort of spin on it by asking, will you help save lives? And since the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline works to do just that, and what's being asked of people with the survey helps them accomplish their mission. So you might feel much more inclined to participate in the survey after seeing the strategic messaging than you might if the flyer had just asked, will you take this survey? So sometimes there is like, I don't know, there's a better way to say it, but all I can think of right now is like low hanging fruit. Where there's like there can be puns involved, there can be different like unique opportunities where you can sort of work with what you've got. And if there is an opportunity to do that, um, I would take it because I think it makes your messaging more direct and gut punchy or clever. Um, that sort of thing, that sort of messaging with the viewer and is memorable and leaves the viewer something to take with them. Um, yeah, so if you have like opportunities like that, you should definitely take that. So, like we've seen in some of these examples, it's a great idea to include a mix of both text and images. But where do you find images? So there are a ton of places. Designing platforms like Canva, Adobe Express, Pictochart, and more allow you to search for icons and images, but some are premium or paid. Even if you find some that are perfect but are under the premium feature, you can still use those to get a good idea of things to search for in places that have free images like Google. Um, Clip art, or it's nowadays called icons on Microsoft Office products, is also good for little clip art graphics, and they're free. You can save these as images or just take a screenshot of them using your computer's built-in screenshotting tool. Um, you can also remove backgrounds and images in PowerPoint for free. It's a little more tedious than how automatic it is on like Canva, but it is the free alternative to do that. And I think also I'm if it requires it when I do this Canva demo, I might also like Google and see what other like free background remover resources there are, because I'm sure there are some. Because unfortunately it is like a paid feature on Canva. Um, but yeah, I have like step-by-step guide for how to do the removing background images that I can share later. Um, the other thing on here is the map chart, which I use a lot. I don't know if it will be like I don't know how relevant it will be for you all, but I just wanted to include it in here just because I think it's a really great resource and can also be, I just feel like it's used a lot when, talking about like regional or like statewide stuff. So sometimes you might find that making a map for your graphic will show what you need to show in the best way. And so MapChart is a free resource. I don't think any part of it is paid. I might be wrong, but I've never run into anything that is like paywalled that I needed to use. Um, it it lets you do like a map of like literally anywhere, and you can do like counties or states or counties within a state. There's a lot of different options, and it's really easy to use. And so I have like a step-by-step guide about how to use that to like for like Kentucky counties as well. If I can share that too. Um, so when you're pairing text with images or using text at all in a graphic, make sure to stick to only one or two, or at most two fonts. It usually becomes a little jarring for the viewer if you use more than that. You can make text stand out by using formatting tools like bold, italics, underline, and shadow, and there's like a few others. Um, the trick is to use it sparingly to create a real sense of contrast between what's formatted and what's not. You'll notice that these examples tend to follow the 1 to 2 font rule and also use formatting sparingly. And most of them do use some sort of graphic or image paired with text as well. Um, so now I was just going to do a Canva demo really quick. Is there anything that anyone like, can anyone think of an event or any kind of thing that they would need like some sort of graphic created for? I was just going to do like a sort of shout out and then we can make it together. Or I can also just think of something randomly. I'm totally cool doing that too.
So Levi, in the chat box, somebody put in their parenting groups.
Okay, cool.
I was gonna say like parent cafes for the community.
Okay, cool. All right, let's do it like we're making, I guess, just an Instagram post. I feel like that's the most universal, like square size. And I am on like a Canva free account, so none of this will be, we're just using all free stuff. So can I ask more about the parenting cafes? What happens at those?
It's open to the public generally or a certain demographic. For example, we do them in Trigg County last year, and it's open to any parent that has a student at Trigg County.
Okay.
And they usually have some sort of guest speaker. They've got door prizes,
Cool.
some sort of meal.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So is there anything else that should be included on this? Like that's like that should definitely be included on here. Oh, cool. Thank you. Just got a little graphic here. So usually the way that I try to do things is I will get all of the text that like absolutely has to be on the flyer, and I will sort of just place it on there just to have it on there just to remind myself of what is needed. And Lee just sent me this little logo, which looks really cool. So we'll make sure we have room to put that on there too. Let's see. Oh, and I got a description. Thank you so much. Parent
I'm
Cafe
just
is
gonna, I'm
Oh.
just gonna drop some info in the chat and then you can pick and choose what to use.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna paste this onto my Canva document real quick. But usually like sometimes most of the time I just make stuff from scratch, but sometimes if I'm feeling a little lost, then I will look at like Canva templates to give me an idea. If I'm in a real rush, then I'll use some of these Canva templates, but these work really well. And I think a lot of them are not paid. Um, so that's always an option too. Let's see. I'm just gonna read through this real quick. So my immediate thought would be to my I always just do this too, where I sort of like purge through ideas that I have. And so like my immediate thought is that since it's called like Parent Cafe, we could do like a cafe theme, like coffee, that type deal. Um, so usually I'll make like a couple different options and then give myself the choice of which one I prefer afterwards. Um, but so we know for sure that Parent Cafe needs to be on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here. So usually I'll just like lay my my text out like that. And for me, I always try to like put any kind of like incentives as like a little spiky like circle or like just some way to emphasize that to let people know like, hey, if you come to this, then like there's opportunities to get some free swag or like whatever, what might encourage people to come as well. Um, thank you so much for all these things to include here. So we'll want to include this video too, since that's like a nice resource. And when I include this, I'm going to make it a tiny URL real quick. So I went and copied my long link of that video. And I'll enter my long link here, just paste it right in. It's really not that long of a link, but I'm just going to go the extra step and make it just a little bit easier for people. So I'm just going to make the back end of this, I guess, just Parent Cafe December. We'll try it like that. Parent Cafe December, just like that. And we'll see if it has been taken before. So you can only make like, the link that you create can only be used once, obviously. And so sometimes you might have to like mess around with your like the back end of your URL just to make sure that it's available. And so sometimes that can involve just putting like dashes between your words, or like I could have called it something totally different. So I'm just gonna copy this and make sure it works where I put it in my little flyer thing. Yep. Okay. So now I know it's good to include. Also, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but my favorite thing on Canva is that you can, if you want to like duplicate text, you can just click on it and then hold down the Alt key, and it makes a different copy of it. Um, that's like my favorite little shortcut trick. So I probably want to put this down here somewhere, just because we're getting into the more specific here. I'll put more information or to learn more like that. And now I'm gonna put my little incentives up here. And it's gonna look kind of nuts for a little bit, but by the end of it, it'll all come together. So I'm just put in, I guess I could say free food. And let's see if I have any. We're just gonna act like we already know who the guest speaker is. I might not have any actual. Um, I'm just gonna act like I'm putting in a picture of the guest speaker. And so I'll just search for a picture of a person, if any of those are free. This guy looks like he could work. Okay. Canva also has these little like picture frame things. So I want him, well, sorry, I want him to be in a circle. So I'm just gonna type in circle frame. And it gives you this weird little thing that you can just drag your image into and it makes it the shape. And you can edit it kind of how you need it to be cropped. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and change this font. Well, actually, I might do that later. Um, free food, bill prizes, guest speaker. Hmm. I think I would like to include a little bit of this just because it lets people know like what they're getting themselves into, but it's a lot. So we might cut it down just a little bit. Okay. So I think I will go with, I'll just try out the idea of like coffee shop vibes. So let's just type in coffee, see what comes up. I'm thinking like a realistic image of a cup of coffee. This looks good and it's free. Then let's see what happens when I type in parents, see if there's any like good graphics for that. I like this one, but it's paid, so I can't use that one. Maybe we'll just keep it at this coffee cup for now. So now I've got all the information that absolutely should be on here, and so I can kind of get messing with it. So it's mostly, it's a pretty, there's a lot of negative, like empty space on this graphic. And so that tells me that I can get a sort of jazzy background if I want to. Um, and I might, just to make sure that you can see the text well, I might just put like a background behind this text. So I'll just put like a random shape, just a rectangle. And keeping in the theme of cafe, I'm just gonna look for more coffee related images. Trying to see if there's like a coffee stained background or something like that I can use. There we go. See how this looks. I might really hate it. I don't personally. We'll keep it there just for a second though to see what happens. So I'm going to use really high contrast colors for that text, just since it's like a large amount of text. And I know that that'll be high enough contrast to pass that accessibility checker that I was talking about earlier. All right. And we're just going to act like this guy's name is John Doe. So if I really wanted to, I guess I will go ahead and just see. I'm going to go and try to remove the background of this with logo. And I know you can do it in Canva and it's really easy, but you have to pay for it. So let's see what happens when I try to click it and I'm on a paid account. Yeah. So it makes you either do a free trial or pay for it. So I'm just going to do like a quick screen grab of this logo. And then I'll save it to my computer. And I'll pop it in PowerPoint. But before I do that, I'm going to go and see what free background remover resources they are. Sorry, I should have done. I didn't think to do this before when I was making the PowerPoint. I apologize. Let's see. I think just for sake of time, I might just go ahead and show you how to do it on the PowerPoint, just because I don't know what these other ones are. Let's see. So you just pull up a blank PowerPoint if you want and go ahead and insert your image. So you just click on your image and then go to picture format and then remove background. So this is going to be a tedious one to fix, but it's really not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time. So it gives you these little, it's sort of like how it is on Canva where you can like mark areas to keep and remove, go through and mark what you want to stay. And for the text, I'm not sure how it will go. But the other alternative is that if you have an image that has like a white background like this, and the background remover is not working for you, I think it's okay to just leave the white background on there sometimes. Because this is a clear image and it's a really nice logo and a logo that should be a part of this flyer. So if you can't get the background removed to work, I wouldn't worry too awful much about it. I would still use your image with the white background. See, this is not working like I want it to. Because I don't want all these little tiny. So for this tool it works really well when you have like I bet if it were just this part of, if it were just this image, like this little logo and not all this text, I bet it would work a little bit better. But let's do one more thing. But let's just keep it as is. But that is how you do the background remover. And like I said before, you can also search for some different free background removers as well.
Hey, Levi, someone commented that you could put as a white circle behind it. You
Yeah.
want to show them how to do that?
Yeah. So like I put this one in a circle frame. You can do the same thing. And that way it'll take the corners off. That's a really good point. I didn't think to do that. So you search for your circle frame or whatever shape you want it to be, and you just drag it in there and it takes on your image. And if you want to edit it or like shrink it or make it bigger, you just double click on it. And it lets you like change the size and like move it around. This one is like the perfect size, so it doesn't let me change the size actually, but yeah. See, that already looks better because the corners are cut off, so it looks professional. Thank you for that. Um, so let's see. I want to delete this background, but another thing for one of my pet peeves is that so the default font in Canva is like Canva Sans. It's just like the Canva made font. And so if you don't choose what font to use, then it's going to default to this like generic Canva font. And I just think that if we have the option, we should choose a different font that's not just like the basic one. Um, since we're already designing the graphic, then I would make choose a custom font just because if you use Canva, then you know that that's like the first step, like I don't know. Anyway, it's just one of my pet peeves. I think you should change the font. And so I'm going to change the font. And it could be really whatever you want. It could be, this probably does not work. Does this session end at 11 or 11:30?
11:30.
Okay, cool. All right. Sorry. So I'm going to try to find a different background. So I'm going to type in cafe and see what happens. See if I can get any images that like give me that sort of vibe. Or maybe I'll just look up blurred background. The good thing about Canva is that there are so many different options that you can search like anything and get a lot of ideas from what comes up. Um, so a lot of these are paid. So what I'm looking for is like a coffee stained background. So we're just going to really play up this cafe aspect. So I'm just going to look up literally coffee stained background and see what comes up. These are all pretty intense. think I kind of like this one the best. We'll see if how it looks on our image. I'm gonna like right click it and choose to set it as background whenever it pops up. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll change this font. The other thing about Canva is that there's so many fonts. I can spend like so long going through each option. I really like this font, but it could be like a little hard to read, I think. So I'm not gonna use it, even though I do really like it. And see, there are a lot that I can't use because they're pro, but there's so many that I can use that are not paid. I'm trying to find a font that gives coffee shop vibes a little bit. Or just like fits with the graphics somehow. And I'm also keeping in mind that I'm just going to use either one or two fonts. I think this might be a little hard to read too, so I'm going to change that as well. I'm just changing all my fonts to make sure I only have just those two fonts. One feature that Canva has that's very helpful in making things look really professional is this little position tab. It lets you center all of your stuff like really easily, or like if you need it all aligned to the left, then you just select everything that you need aligned and then click whatever alignment you need. And so before I export stuff, I always check and make sure that my alignment is correct too. So let's see. I like this so far, but it's like it feels a little all over the place. Um, I'm gonna do. I know that from at a distance, I can tell that this is some sort of like event that involves parents and maybe just hanging out, like sipping coffee together. Um, at this point, I think I'm gonna do something to emphasize this URL real quick. So I'm gonna put a background on it. And I'm also gonna put a QR code on there just in case. So on Canva, if you go down to apps That's how you get to the QR code maker. I don't know about y'all, but something about this like white space next to these with these two circles is really bothering me. Um, it makes, I think this empty space makes the graphic itself feel really empty. And so I'm just gonna see if pulling this over helps at all. It's okay. I think it's a little bit better. One thing is that this does not have any sort of date on it. So I'm just gonna make up, say that's today. Since there's not really a great place for this, I'm just gonna, oops, I'm gonna move this to make room for some of the most important information, which will be the time and date. So I got a question in the chat. What did you click to move John's photo and title at the same time? So if you want to select multiple things at once, you just click one thing and then hold down your shift key and then click the next and then click the next while you're still holding down that shift key. And that lets you select multiple things at once. And then once they're all selected, you can let go of your shift key and just move them around like that. And so it's a very helpful tool. Um, and you can also like click and drag to select multiple things at once. Yeah, I found the Canva tutorial videos helpful when I first started working with this, or did everything in something else. Um, Honestly, I have never looked at those Canva tutorial videos. I I came from using like Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. And so all the little and the way those programs, those design programs are designed is usually that the all the little shortcuts transfer over usually. And so I just like took what I had learned from the Adobe stuff and applied it to Canva. Um, yeah, but I would think they would be pretty helpful. I've never tried them. that is one thing that I should give a look at. But I would think that would be pretty helpful. Just for sake of time, I'm going to download this a little bit and see. I've changed it so that our big information is up here. And then we get a little down into the graphic, and some other important information is on either side of this like large group of text. So it's still sort of sectioned off in a way where not all the information is like grouped together in a way that's overwhelming. I can still, my eye still moves through the graphic in a way that flows well. And so it's not my favorite thing that I've made ever or anything like that, but I think it works. And so I'm gonna go ahead and just download it. So I'll share, and then PNG is fine. And I just want to show y'all how to do this accessibility thing real quick. So that website is called WebAIM. And so you can just Google WebAIM contrast checker. And so I've downloaded my file. And so what I'll do is go ahead and pull it up. There. I'm gonna make my screen just a little smaller so I can pull up this window on the same screen. Oh. So I just want to make sure that the colors that I'm using for the font and the background have enough contrast to pass this contrast checker and make sure that there's a strong enough contrast for it to be easily readable. And so I'll check a couple different colors. And so this, notes that you're going to check your foreground and your background. And so if you're checking for text contrast, then your background will be just this background color and your text will be your foreground color. Luckily, it has this color picker where you can just click inside here. I'm going to start with the background first because that's easier. You just click inside here and this little thing comes up. And if you click this little eyedropper, then a magnifying glass comes up and lets you just like select whatever color from your graphic, like raw off your graphic. So I'm going to select my background color. And I want to come over here and do the exact same thing just with my foreground, which will be my text. So it's white. So let's get a good color white. And so it passes all of the tests. So there's really good contrast here. I'm going to check for this background with this text. So this time the background will be sort of tan. And that's a really good contrast as well. And so we know that the contrast, at least for the colors, passes all the tests that we needed to. Let's see here. And then I'll try to log into Facebook really quick and show you all the alt text stuff real quick. All right. So let's say I was going to post this graphic to Facebook. Hmm. All right. So actually, let's go to my personal thing just in case I accidentally post this. Okay. So I'm just gonna act like I'm creating a post just like normal. And I'm gonna drag my photo in here so I can upload it. And let's see. Okay. So when you want to add alt text, you just you hover over the photo and click edit. Here we go. And it's real easy. It just comes up alternative text. So that it's seamless, you just put your photo in and then click edit and then alternative text. Okay, cool. And I didn't know this, but it looks like it also will sometimes generate alt text for you too, just automatically. So what you would need to do for this alt text is you could just describe the image. It doesn't have to be like every word is on there. Like every word that's on the graphic has to be in the alt text. It's just giving someone a brief overview of what you're looking at essentially. So you could say something like a graphic for Parent Cafe on December 6th from 12:05. I would just leave it at that, like a really just surface level description. And then just by doing that quick step, you've made your post way more accessible. And you just click save. And essentially what that alt text means is that I'm pretty sure this is essentially what it does. It's like if you have a photo and you like hover over it, that alt text will show up. If you have a screen reader, the screen reader will read that alt text in place of the image. So yeah, I think that's it for. I think that's all I wanted to show you all. Yeah.
Levi, I'm a very visual person, so you walking us through this example was very helpful to me. And some of the functions, even that you talked about on PowerPoint, I didn't know existed. So thank you for taking the time to do this with us today. Very
Yeah.
helpful.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Does anybody have any questions for Levi while he's here? I'm getting some comments in the chat box. Questions going once, going twice? All right. Well, Levi, thank you again for coming today and sharing with us. As a reminder, this session will be available in the coming days on the REACT Resources and Training channel. I encourage you to share that information out with your REACTs and for the agencies that you represent. I think that this is helpful, even beyond REACTs and the work that we do. So as a reminder, I'm going to put the session evaluation in the chat box. right now. And if you will take a moment to complete that. At some time today, that would be very helpful for us. And just to let you know, our next React Learning Series session is actually scheduled for January the 16th, which is a little different from when we normally have the React Learning Series sessions. But this one is going to be on January the 16th from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is actually going to be a REAC orientation covering everything from the history of Kentucky's regional system of care governance body to the REAC purpose, the infrastructure, the expectations, and also include the alignment of the REAC purpose and infrastructure and expectations to the National System of Care framework. So we hope to see you there. I hope you have a great weekend and a great holiday season. Thank you.